All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas Barr. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Local First Arizona, and we are thrilled to have our partners from Arizona Financial Credit Union with us today, sharing on the financial readiness and well-being for small businesses. We've partnered with Arizona Financial for several years on a variety of programs, and they just have a wealth of resources and information to provide small businesses. So we're really happy to have them here today. I have both Phil and Mohammed from Arizona Financial, which are going to take the lead on presenting on this workshop today. So this is going to be recorded, and we will have it live on the Local First Arizona Local Learning Lab afterwards. And we also will send out a copy of the recording with the slides too. So if you need to reference the information, you're more than welcome to. You may notice that you're unable to send a direct chat to the presenters, but you can use our Q&A box. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and drop them in there. And Phil and Mohammed will take on your questions at the end as well. So with that, I will go ahead and give it over to them and really appreciate everybody being here today. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And yeah, what Thomas said here. Yeah. Well, as we go through, we're going to cover a lot of high level stuff here. There's a lot to go over. We're going to keep it a little high level so you can hopefully catch one or two things for each type of business, depending on which stage you're in. But as I go along, feel free to drop questions, anything like that, into the box. We'll save some time at the end, and then also too, if you want to just hold on to a question, we'll set some time towards the end to tackle them. But yeah, let's jump in. We got a lot to cover here. So here's our objectives today. So we're going to talk about small business growth, leveraging your business for success, personal credit versus business credit, and then finish off with some helpful tips. So small business growth. Now this is a graph from the Harvard Business Review, and it's tough because there's so many types of businesses between so many industries. But what they did is they tried to encapsulate everything into 5 stages. We're going to focus on stage 1 through 3 today. I think that's the stages that most of us here, business owners here, are going to be falling into. But you have existence, survival, success, takeoff, and resource maturity. And as you can kind of see by the graph there, the younger you are, generally you fall into the earlier stage, and then as you mature as a business and an organization, you'll move on into the more mature side of the graph. But let's just jump real quick. We'll go high level over what kind of encompasses you. You can kind of decide where your business falls into in terms of which growth phase you're in. But we have first existence, which is the startup phase. And really, this stage is all about obtaining customers, delivering products or services, newly started business that you truly have yet to, let's say, stabilize your production, product, or service. You generally don't have much of a customer base or let's say, loyal customer base that are going back to you for repeat business. And your main focus on this stage is obtaining your customer base and delivering your product or service. Big concern in this stage: does your business have enough capital or cash flow to cover the demands of this startup phase? This is pivotal. This is the stage where you generate enough revenue to cover expenses and the demands that everything comes in this startup phase. This is really the make or break for your business. Do you really have a business here that can go long term? Because without the capital, cash flow to cover it, there's really no need to be in business here. It's all about that getting there to that point where you're actually earning cash, covering that, getting profitable. And generally in this stage, the owner is the business, performing all important tasks. You're the major supplier of energy, directions, and sometimes with help from relatives and friends, also the startup capital. And it's you are the face of the business. You're doing all the work. You are the one that's forefront in it, on boots on the ground. You're basically wearing 10 different hats because you are running the entire thing. Once you get out of this stage, say you're profitable, you become well, then you go what's called the survival stage. And this is where it really becomes about the relationship between revenue and expenses. And at this point, you've demonstrated that you have a workable business entity. And this one is easy to kind of tell when you've gotten into this stage where you're out of the existence, you're into the survival, where you have a business, you have customers, you're earning money, potentially profit at this point. You've created your niche in the market. You have your items available. We'll talk about a little bit more about that. But that's the main one that you've made it into the survival stage. But you've demonstrated that you have a workable business entity. You value in the market. You're there, and that there's a viable business to continue on growing. Then the problem shifts from existence to survival. Just because you have a workable business entity and you can exist, the question then becomes, can you survive long term? Is this something that you can go another year, 5, 10, 20 years out and still continue to grow, make money, make profit, do all that good stuff that we're all in business for? And then the big one, I'm going to talk a lot about it today, cash flow. Cash flow is king, but do you have enough cash flow to break even? Can you cover an unexpected expense? Do you have enough cash flow to grow? Those are the big ones here, because without cash flow, again, there's really no point in being in business. This comes to, can you pay yourself enough of a salary and then still have some money left over in the business to put back into the business to sustain that growth? You have a piece of equipment break, something vital to the business. Do you have enough capital set aside to replace that without going under, going out of business? And at this stage, you have limited employees. They're carrying out well-defined orders, but the owner is still very much in the forefront, doing a lot, kind of still the face of the business. And all these employees are under direct supervision of that owner. You continue in size, growth, profitability, then you go into success. And now success is broken into 2 separate stages. You have stage 3.1. And with that one, you finally have true economic health. You have sufficient size, you've got the market penetration, you have that economic success. You're at that point in the business, you're making good money, you're paying your employees well, you're paying yourself a salary, potentially taking some distributions, you have enough money to put back into the business, you're working on certain things, efficiencies, other things of that nature. You've kind of made it at this point. You have a business, and this is the one where it's a little more difficult to pinpoint when you're going to get there, how quick you get there. This could be, 6 months for some businesses. This could be 5 years for some businesses. Some businesses never technically leave the survival stage, but once you make success, you hit that spot where you're there, you've made the penetration, you're economically successful, and this is stage 1. Stage 3.1 is where you stay there indefinitely, where you're happy, you're making a great living, you're happy where you're at. You really don't have the drive, the need to really blow the company up. It's everything you've ever wanted. And again, sometimes as well, there's other factors, competitors that make it very difficult, but you're in your niche and you're very comfortable there. And at this spot, 3.1 is staying in there indefinitely. And then provided that markets don't change, management comes in, you step away a little too much, management reduces the competitive abilities. So again, it's very important in this stage to not step away too far, but it's a good spot to be in. And then again, this spot is where you actually start bringing in functional managers. Cash is plentiful. The owner then manages more strategy, takes a little bit of a step back, brings in competent staff, maintain that status quo, and then slowly disengages from the business in a sense where they're not doing every little task involved in the business. Now, stage 3.2, it's a little different. You're still there. You're at that, very, very market penetration, doing very well, but you want to take it to the next level. You want to 1, 2, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, whatever it is, your revenue, move up into that next level. That's what sets the stage for 3.2. You're getting ready for substantial growth. Really blow this company up. Let's see where we can take this. And then this is the stage where you're leveraging the borrowing power of the business, risking it for financial growth, and you're staying active in all phases, but you're also bringing in functional and professional managers to help you get to that next level. You have a strong outlook on the company's future rather than so much the current condition and just maintaining that indefinitely. So like successful, go to stage 4. Now stage 4 and 5, I'm just going to touch on briefly. This is the takeoff stage. Again, here it just becomes rapid growth, bringing in key members. This is where you're bringing in CFOs and consultants and a lot of very, very skilled people to help you get to that next stage. You have to have the capital and cash to satisfy the demand of that growth. This point, your business kind of comes decentralized, where there's so many people in it that you have to delegate, you have to divisionalize it to hit that rapid growth. And then you have become, as the owner, reasonably separated, but you still have a strong presence within the business. And at this stage, this is one where we see a lot of offers are plentiful to people come in and they want to acquire your business. But that also can happen in really any stage throughout the process. And then if managed correctly and the growth is achieved, this is where you go to stage 5. Now, stage 5, again, we'll very brief amount of time on this. These are the big companies. These are the name brand recognition companies that have been around for decades. They've arrived. They have the advantages of size, resources, and talent, meaning people are very high skill employees are coming to them to work. You don't have to go out, find employees. They can use their size, pressure suppliers, things of that nature. But let's focus on stages 1 through, let's say, 3.1 and a little bit of 3.2. So big thing here is, do you have a plan? That's what this is all about. And really where I'm going to focus today is, like I said, this is a lot of stuff to cover. We only have an hour, plus we'll set aside a little bit for questions, but I'm hoping you can gather 1-2 things to really think about in this presentation that you can, pinpoint to your business and help hopefully improve your business in the long run. But this is all going to revolve around creating a plan. And when you create a plan, you want to have a short and long-term plan. Short term, say 1 to 6 months, something that could be immediate to within half a year, and then long term, always outlook 12, 24 months. And the big thing with this is it's customized to your business. Only you know your business. You can't really go on Google and say, I own a car auto shop, and how do I make a plan for the auto shop? You can find resources and things of that nature, but only you're going to know specifically what in your business that you need to focus on, where you can improve on. And the big thing with this is it's always changing. This is something that is constantly changing. You're not going to make a plan one time, stick to that plan for the next 5 years. As things change, markets change, customer bases change, suppliers, things of that nature. It's an ever-changing environment out there that you have to adjust your plan to. So,
and if I can actually spend a little bit of time on that,
sure, go ahead,
Phil, to give people some context of how important this is. Now, when you're talking about a long-term and short-term plan, someone like Phil, right, who's in the commercial space and commercial lending, this is a pivotal moment where when you're developing your business plan, it's extremely important. It may not sound like it would be effective, or sometimes people would question the effectiveness of a plan. But as you're developing your relationships and you're looking into your business and saying, hey, I want to partner with someone who's going to help me get into these, these higher level stages, it's extremely important to focus on it, right? We can't really stress it enough, to where you're putting in the thought, the research, and the effort to show the sustainability of what you're trying to create. So I do want to emphasize that, especially for those people that have participated in Rerise, and Where's the Locale, your pitch deck, your business plan is extremely important to that factor. So it's a shameless plug, but I definitely want to highlight that.
Very, very valid point. Very valid point. So jumping in now to the existence of folks, the startup folks within the workshop today. Some of the items, again, I'm going to go over a few items here, just really food for thought here. And some of these may stick, some may not, but if you can take 1 or 2 of these, I think it's going to be a success in the long run. But the big thing you want to focus on in the existence startup phase is your competitive advantage. What sets you apart from the competitors? a lot of business owners are coming in. They're not coming in with a revolutionary new product that's first to market. We have seen that in the past, but a lot of the times you're competing against existing businesses. So what can you offer that those businesses cannot? Whether it's better service, cheaper product, things of that nature. An example I like to have is in the past, I worked for a smaller bank, and it's tough for smaller banks to compete against the large behemoths out there, the Wells Fargo. But what we offered was service, and it's kind of funny. It worked out well. That bank ended up getting acquired by Arizona Financial, and Arizona Financial also has that service first mindset. So that's where we like to set ourselves apart, is that you're going to get that specialized service. You're going to talk to actual people. You're not going to be a number. So just an example of one. And you have to decide what that competitive advantage is going to be. What is it going to be that makes somebody go to you over your competitor? It's a big one. It's very important. That's built into your business plan, Muhammad mentioned just a second ago, but it's something that you really need to focus in on, decide what that is, excuse me, and move forward with it. Really understanding what you're selling. Now, it sounds obvious, here I'm selling a product, but again, this goes back to that competitive advantage. Maybe you're selling a service tied to that product, or you're selling security, you're a house cleaning, and you're like, well, we can guarantee you that you have nothing to worry about with having strangers in our house. You're selling that sense of security. So you really want to kind of focus in, and that goes hand in hand a lot of times with what that competitive advantage is really scoping into and understanding what exactly you are selling. And with that, who is your customer? Now, it's funny these days, it's crazy how the targeted ads can kind of pick that out, but that goes hand in hand with it. You're not going to want to market to the wrong segment, where if you're a toy company, you're not going to want to market to, retirees. I mean, maybe they have grandchildren and whatnot, but you get where I'm going with that, is you really got to understand who your customer is and who you are selling to, because that's going to help you target them better, really improve your efficiency in the company in this stage, which is this stage is all about efficiency. But just really try to understand who you're selling to, who your customer is. And then lastly, profitability is the winner here. Obviously, that is the key driver that really puts you into that stage 2, that survival stage. But again, if you're not profitable, really there's not a lot of long-term outlook here. Again, you could be close there, you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you want to be profitable. That's what we're all in business for. So profitability is the winner here. End of the day, you're in here trying to make money with the business. So that's the key thing here. And there's a lot of factors, and we'll touch on some more in a little bit, but it'll be a little bit of an overlap between these that I'll speak on profitability a bit more. Oh, I'm sorry, there was one more. This is huge. This goes to what Mohammed said. This is laying foundation for lifelong partnerships. And I cannot stress this enough. We see it all the time. You're tied into your business, you're focused on that, but there is so much value in going out there and developing partnerships. And when I say partnerships, I'm talking with your suppliers, your bookkeepers, your CPAs, your bankers, your credit union, big one. And it's tough. It's very tough at this stage to get business financing, but you get in there, you get the visibility, you start that relationship early, and it will pay dividends in the long run. And that goes for a lot of these partnerships you're going to create. Don't neglect that. You really, really want to develop these partnerships early, and these things could last a lifetime. And, like I mentioned, you have suppliers, bookkeepers, attorneys, bankers, all of those people. Get in there early, develop that relationship, develop the partnership there. And when you get into the later stages of the business growth, they will pay dividends. So you get to that stage, as we talked, where you're making profit, you're profitable, going into survival. And again, this is big relationship between revenue and expenses, where this is where the power of budgeting and setting realistic financial projections come in. This goes well with this separating wants and needs, where as a business owner, it's very, actually all three of these are going to go very well together. separating your wants and needs, operating lean. Do you really need to spend the money on whatever it is? Is this going to give you tangible return, or is this something that in, 2-3 months you're going to look back on and say, I wish I didn't make that purchase. I wish I didn't deploy the capital to that. And it's very important in this stage. Revenue and expenses, that gets you to your profitability and your cash flow, and just really zoning in on where you can increase revenue, cut expenses, and you have to operate lean in this stage. Very, very vital. And again, cash flow is king. It always, always, always is king here. And I have a story here of a member that we've worked with in the past, and he had very, very long history of success. He's kind of stuck in this stage. Nothing wrong with that. Makes a very good living for himself and also pays his employees very well. And then he decided that he wanted to go out and get a piece of equipment that was going to help these efficiencies, and he was sure of it, everything like that. But the problem is that he didn't do enough due diligence. He didn't really sit down, analyze, did he need this? Did he want this? But what ended up happening is a piece of machinery that was from China that didn't work. And there was nobody in the state of Arizona that could repair it. So he ended up having to go abroad, literally abroad, and the only people that could repair it were in Europe. And they said they quoted him $100,000 to fly, bring a team out, repair it. Well, he spent $80,000 on that piece of equipment. So that was something where it was, did you need that? Did you do your due diligence on it? And that really hurt him. It set him back. So things of that nature, you're making big decisions for the business. Really, really focus in on, do you want that? Do you need it? And then if you do decide you need it, really think it through. Is it something that you truly need, or you're just telling yourself that? But big one, expect the unexpected. Now I know it's a little, goes against it, because the unexpected is something you can't expect, but really, really, again, take the time, try to think through many possibilities of what could happen, where things can go, and try to expect the unexpected in regard to that, where, if you are expecting something to go wrong, something to hit a speed bump of that nature, when it does actually happen, then you have that plan to prepare for it. You set something aside, capital, whatever it may be, for that unexpected event, which will help you get over it. And then just don't blindly go forward with rose-tinted glasses thinking everything's going to go good, because we know in business there's always something that comes up, always an unexpected expense, and it's going to help you tremendously if you can predict those, get in front of them, and help you overcome those when you get there. And the big one here, again, this goes back to that relationship between revenue and expense. You're selling, you're always selling, always increase that top line. That's the goal here. The two big components here, which equals cash flow. You got the top line, which is your revenue. You have the expenses in there. You want to increase the revenue while decreasing expenses as much as possible. And you're focusing sell. Who can we market to? Who can we bring in? Additional customer base. And it's so important at this stage to really, really just be out there, always be thinking in terms of your business, where can you increase that revenue? Where else can you sell? And last one is, again, I'm going to go back on this a lot today, is continue to develop these partnerships that I mentioned earlier. This is the stage where you'll have much more luck getting actual commercial business financing. But again, you started earlier at this stage. You have that relationship with the credit union, the bank you're working with. You've proven to them, you've come to them early. You said, this is what I want to do. I did it. Now I'm ready to get some financing, and it's going to help you tremendously in the long run. And again, that also goes for, bookkeeping. We always say in banking that the three things you never want to skimp on is banking, or credit unioning, we'll call it, a bookkeeper or CPA, and an attorney. Those things are going to pay huge dividends in the future. I know at times, let's talk a little bit on bookkeeping. It's a tough thing. You like to do it yourself. You neglect it a little bit, but that is truly so important. It gives a snapshot of where you're at. It allows you to kind of see your business on paper, allow you to scope into what's working, what's not working. And some people out there will offer very, very competitive, let's call it, rates to come in and clean it up. But we've learned you really get what you pay for when it comes to bookkeeping and CPA. And that's something that if you're going to spend the extra money, that's something that I would always recommend doing, because in the long run, they're going to pay for themselves 100%. They're going to find better ways to make your tax returns more efficient, things of that nature. And again, going to circle back to banking as well. That relationship, that partnership, this is where it actually starts coming to fruition, where you can actually start partnering with them, working with them, and then you can leverage that relationship, that partnership, to help your business grow. Or even just unexpected items come up. Now you have a bank to go to get potential debt. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, with what Phil and how all of this ties together, to really emphasize this aspect of separating the wants from needs and operating lean. When you're partnering with the right group of people, right? Those attorneys, those CPAs, those bankers, those are the types of expenses, right? To Phil's point, that are going to pay dividends in the future, right? Anytime that you're able to connect those partners and they could see what you're trying to create, they're going to work with you to make sure that you get to that goal, to that aspect of, oh, okay, this is what scaling really looks like for you. And you start seeing you move from that idea phase into practicality, right? How practical is this going to be for me as I make that investment into these specific aspects? But also, to go back to one aspect of operating lean, I can't stress that enough, right? Especially in the beginning stages, you guys want to watch your expenses as best as you possibly can, right? And make sure that your money is being spent with those institutions, those individuals, those services that are going to help you really move the dial. So definitely focus on that.
All right, now let's move on to success. So success, you start to focus now on creating efficiencies. Now you can start looking at, can we contact a supplier? Can we pay a little early to get a 1% discount? This is where you have that power now. This is where you have excess cash flow. This is where you can leverage that excess cash flow to go out and create those efficiencies. This is huge here, little bit here, little bit there, it saves a lot. So you save 1-2% on your cost of goods sold, it's gonna drop right down to your profitability. And in the success stage, you're able to really zone in and start creating those efficiencies and finding them, being creative on certain items here where, hey, I'm gonna start buying twice the amount of my supplies, and I'm going to get a discount on that. And I know we have the customer base, we have the workflow that I'll use this inventory, so I'm going to double the amount of order I have. So that's just one example. There could be many, depending on what your business is, what you sell, the service you sell. But that's where you can really focus on creating these efficiencies, because you have that excess cash flow within the business to deploy to that. Again, I keep coming back to it, but these partnerships, this is the pivotal area here. This is where, banks, credit unions want to do business with you. They're actively soliciting you. This is where you can go to them, get things set up, get equipment loans easy, equipment guidance loans. You want to buy a building, things of that nature. It's so easy at this stage to help you grow. And then this is where you create these dividends. And I have a quick story here where the importance of these partnerships. And again, there's a longtime member we were working with, and he went years and years and years doing very, very well in his business. And one year he decided, it was recently, that he wanted to bring in additional sales team. And with that sales team, he was going to, increase revenue. It was going to be a great year. He thought it would be a great efficiency, one of those items that could really improve the top line revenue of the company. Well, he ended up making kind of a poor hire. He brought in 2 sales guys that didn't really turn out to be as experienced as they seemed. And not only that, they were bidding projects incorrectly. And he ended up having a pretty tough year. And it just so happened, it's funny how these things work out. He ended up wanting to buy a building after probably having one of the worst years that he had had in a decade. But I can tell you, if that was somebody coming to us fresh, we had never met at the credit union, we would been very hard for us to make that loan for him to purchase a property. But because he had that relationship, because we had worked with him all these years, we were able to sit down with him. He explained what happened. We saw it on paper. We were like, we get it. You know, things like this happen in business, and it was a speed bump. You got over it. You're going to move forward, and we were able to get the loan done. So because he leaned on those relationships and developed them with us over the years, we were able to still continue and get him into a building when he was purchasing it. So just a great example of how important it is to develop those relationships. And at this stage, the importance of hiring and maintaining key employees here, where this is kind of where you're still front and center. You're operating the business, but you're going to need help. You're going to need to delegate a little bit. You can't do everything. And really getting those trusted employees into the company that can help you run it, that maintain the status quo, keep the mission value of the company, the culture, everything. And the big thing we see all the time is you get those employees, you want to maintain them, you want to keep them, you don't want them going to a competitor. So it's very, very important to keep that front of mind, is when you do have that one employee that's just a rock star, doing very well, that you're fostering that relationship you have with them, keeping them there, maintaining that employment with them. Because last thing you want to see them do is leave, go to a competitor, and then now you're out searching for someone to replace them. This is one as well where you always want to know what's next. Have that plan. People tend to get a little bit complacent in this stage, and they just think everything's going good. They take a step back. They don't think forward. You always have to have that plan. What's going to come next? You know, again, keep it that short plan, that long-term plan. And even if you're happy where you're at, you don't really need to grow anymore. Just fostering it on that plan. Well, how do we just maintain this, keep it going, keep everybody happy, always have that plan. And a big one here we see is that at this point, I mean, you're talking several years getting in here, getting to this spot. You really want to stop and smell the roses. We see too many times that business owners just are so into it, they don't take time to really step back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I'm not saying, you know, taking all the money out of the business, which goes into the next one, but just enjoy what you've done. Kind of revel in what you've built. It's tough to get businesses to this spot and be very proud of what you've built, but that goes hand in hand with the complacency item, or the next item that we have here, is you do not want to get complacent in your business ownership or become frivolous. We've seen it many, many times before. They get a little bit complacent. They start pulling a bunch of money out of the business, kind of living a lifestyle. And then, you know, nothing wrong with that. Really, at the end of the day, that's why we're all in business, is to potentially get up there and live a good lifestyle. But always important to just keep money in the business, keep putting money back into the business, and then don't become complacent. Don't go out and, you know, buy, you know, a yacht, things of that nature, when you really could have better use of that capital put back into the business. And again, another quick story here. We had a gentleman in my previous role, and he got to this spot and he was doing well. And then he decided that he wanted to go start like a hobby business, let's call it. And it was unfortunate, because that hobby business ended up taking roughly 65-70% of his profits from his successful business. And during that time, he neglected the business that was doing well, and it was tough for him. He had to really take a step back in the business. Let's call it the growth cycle of the business, and ended up coming back to the business and had some making up to do, getting it back to where it was, and neglected some key customers and supplier relationships. So again, that's why we're all in business. We want to make money. We want to live a great lifestyle. But at the end of the day, just always keep that plan. Think of what's next. Always try to invest as much as you can back in the business, but at the same time, stop and smell the roses. So stage 3.2, we'll just briefly touch on this because this is where you're actually bringing in expertise. Like I mentioned earlier, you're bringing in a CFO, you're bringing in consultants, things of that nature. It's you're pretty large at this point to get to this spot, but it's the same thing. You have a clear plan in place. You always know where you want to go. You're leveraging the partnerships you've developed with those attorneys, the CPAs, the bankers, whatnot, suppliers, things of that nature. And then again, there's still a continued focus on the efficiencies. Very, very important. But let's go into personal credit versus business credit here. And Mohammed's going to take it off first here. And just a little bit too. Mohammed is a AVP of business banking. So he oversees pretty much our entire depository relationship aspect of the credit union, along with, I call them the smaller loans. So let's say, the small business credit cards, consumer credit cards, up to small personal loans as well. So Mohammed's going to talk real quick on personal credit, and then I'll finish it off with business credit.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. So this area is extremely key, right? When we're thinking about credit and what it means to be lendable, the one thing that I want to start off with and to get everybody thinking is when you're discussing the differences between the two, they don't function the same, right? When we talk about business credit, there isn't exactly a score similar to what you have on the consumer side that you're able to look at and say, oh, I'm an 850 or I'm a 720 or I'm a 680 related to my business. So that's a very big difference whenever we're trying to highlight, what you have today on the consumer end and what you have on the business end. It's important to keep in mind whenever you're looking to create a sustainable future for your business where lending is a part of it. You want to mitigate your risks, and that's where business credit really comes in, right? Business credit, it's all about saying, how do we mitigate our risks and how do we create a mechanism to where what you're borrowing is going to come back, right? So we have that criteria, and it's also being used to leverage and grow your business to where your returns are going to essentially just grow, right? And exceed your expectations. So it's extremely important to kind of keep that in mind to get to that point, right? Especially in the early stages, you can't neglect yourself personally. And that's one area that I like to focus on quite a bit, is that whenever you're looking at yourself and you're saying, okay, my personal finances are going to be separate. Going back to Phil's earlier slides, you are your business, especially in the first stage, right? So your personal finances play a very, very pivotal role in looking or showing institutions what kind of risk you are and what you pose. So it's extremely important for you to mitigate those factors and to understand, as you're partnering with other financial institutions or any institution for that matter, what are those appetites? Do I fit into that picture? And are there ways for me to create or sustain a mechanism to where if I do need to borrow, you'll be there for me, right, to assist me in that future? So it's extremely important to understand that. But again, going back to your personal finances, in the beginning stages, business credit isn't going to be available immediately. If it is, it's going to come at a very high cost. So when we look at personal finances, that's your mechanism of finding ways to say, okay, this is how I'm going to prevent this. If I'm able to borrow or find alternative financing potentially by other means, by using my personal credit to further advance my business, that could be a way for you to say, okay, I'm finding ways to create sustainable growth. And that kind of goes into our next slide. If Phil can go in, why your credit score matters, right? Your credit score, as far as your personal score, it helps mitigate a lot of the risks that institutions look at for a multitude of loans, insurance, home buying, anything to that nature. So it's very important for you to say, as I go down this journey of creating my business, right, and taking that path, is that you invest equally, right, into your personal finances. So that way you make it easy for yourself, you create those fail safes to say, if I can't get it on the business side, is there that mechanism to where maybe I can use some of my personal assets, right, as the guarantor of my business to achieve the goal that I need? Does that create enough history for me to go in and say, hey, look, this is what I did. You may have not been able to provide this to me at that time, right? But I've made the right steps. I've taken the right steps to get to this place. Does that mitigate the risk, right? Because that's what you want to talk about, especially with your banker. You want to talk about, how do I mitigate my risks as much as possible? So it's extremely important to keep that in mind whenever you're looking at that. Now, costs of good credit compared to bad credit. And honestly, guys, when we did this slide, to give you an example, these were rates that were accurate around 2018, 2019, right? This is what you would have seen for someone at a 740 potentially, and what you would see as far as interest rates for those corresponding credit scores now. The one area that I want to highlight is in the current market that we're in today, right? Especially when it comes to credit and borrowing, you want to add close to 5% on each one of those categories to give you a very strong idea of how we are today. Why do I mention that? That increases risk. So you have to have that conversation with your commercial loan officer, with your banker, of saying, like, this climate today, where do I fit in, right? And then we would be able to talk, okay, well, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what the market is essentially pushing out there. So you could see what the cost projections are. On the flip side, when you neglect yourself personally, it's costly. As you could see with the breakdown with the interest paid over time, depending on where you fall, it's almost triple the amount. So you really, really, really want to be able to come in and say, how do I prevent this from happening, right? How do I make small steps, forward steps that would be able to help me mitigate just some of the expenses that I don't have to pay, and I can use this money, albeit over time, towards something else that's going to help me advance myself or advance the business for the most part. So that's extremely important. And that's going to go into a little bit of where the business that Phil's going to talk about and how that all ties together.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Mohammed. So business debt, it gets a little different, like Mohammed said earlier, where there's really no business credit score. So big things we look at on the business side when we go to set up a new loan relationship, whatever it may be, is cash flow and collateral. Those are the two big ones. Now, I do want to warn everyone here that there are institutions out there that will lend without collateral. But as Mohammed said, you're going to pay for it and it's going to be expensive. And just to kind of give you an idea, today you're looking at any line of credit, variable type debt. I would say market's going to probably be around 9 to 10.5, 11% for that rate. And then any term debt is probably going to be, high sixes would be best case, potentially up to like low eights. So you're going to be in that range, but you may be solicited by a company that says, hey, I'll send you loan docs today. You sign it. You don't have to put up any collateral, but you got to pay 20% interest. And again, quick story. We just had an instance where somebody went out and got a 56% APR loan, and it was a $2 million loan. That's over $1 million in interest a year. Poof, gone, that they were paying on that. So again, the more expensive it's going to be, it mitigates their risk to not have collateral. So I would say most traditional lenders are going to want cash flow and collateral. So that's what we look at here. Big ones. And again, credit score is very important, but when we look at this, when your business is in the stage of it, it's not the most important. Again, we are looking at the business to pay back this debt, not necessarily you. So it's still a huge metric. It's in there, but it's not the top two. The top two are going to be cash flow and collateral. And that leads very well into the idea of taxes. So something we run into all the time. You're talking to your CPA. Hey, nobody likes paying taxes. I don't like paying taxes. I don't blame you, but we know the two guarantees in life, death and taxes. And you can go to your CPA, you can get them to get your taxes as low as possible, but we have to go off your tax return. So if you make 100,000 a year and your CPA can, legally, let's say, get it down to show 20,000, we have to go off of that 20,000. We have to go off of the tax return. So it's a fine line you have to walk here, where you have to show enough to show that you can repay some business debt. But at the same time, we understand, we get it. It's something that's inevitable and you want to get as low as possible. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to your CPAs and you have business debt on the horizon that you're looking to get, that's something that you need to show cash flow and profitability to secure the business debt. And again, this is where words talk, but the numbers scream, where you can come, you can have a bad year and tell us, well, this is everything I'm going to do and change it. And next year I'm going to be profitable. But again, we in most institutions are going to go off of historical financials. So it's very important to show that profitability. And again, this is where the importance of having really strong internal books come in, because you can show us it's, July 9th today, where we do a loan for you. You could say, hey, here's my performance through May. Like, look how well I'm doing. And we can tell, hey, these are really, really strong books. You're keeping track of things. And, like I said, it's always going to come down to the numbers. It's going to come down to the financial statements, the tax returns that you provide us when we look at any new business debt. And again, Mohammed touched on a little bit of this, but you really just try to understand what your banker does, what influences their decisions. We're basically in the business of risk in banking, and we have to look everything through that risk lens. So you have a successful business, you want to come to us and just do a spin-off of something else that really you have no expertise in, something like that. It's not going to be something where we go, hey, that's a lot of risk. It's probably not something we want to tackle. But you're renting a property, the owner of the property says, hey, do you want to buy the property? And you come to us and say, hey, I got offered to buy the property, and something like that, where it's like, hey, that's low risk. You've been in that property for a long time. You've been paying rent there. We'll flip that rent to a mortgage, and yeah, that makes sense. So we're always looking at risk, trying to mitigate the risk. But if you can better understand the framework we look at it through, it'll help you better understand where the decisions are made and where we like to see the focus is in terms of cash flow and collateral. So we got a little bit more. We'll quickly breeze through these helpful tips, and then we'll leave the last 10 minutes or so for questions. So again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Patience and persistence is vital here. Really be calculated in your steps. Develop those plans. Make sure everything's well thought out, well articulated. Your primary areas of focus, again, revenue and expenses. That's the big one. And then revenue minus expenses, obviously, is going to be profitability, and that's going to be your cash flow. We've said it a lot. Develop those relationships. Start those relationships young. They'll blossom with your business, and these things are going to pay huge dividends in the future. And there's going to be many times that you can leverage those relationships that you've developed. Really understand your business. It's so important to know what you're selling, who you're selling it to, understand your customer base, your product, your service, whatever it may be. And that's going to help you tenfold when it comes to, again, increasing that top line and reducing expenses when you're growing and building your business. Love what you do. You never work a day in your life. I know it's cliche, but you guys really, it's big, where, if you're truly passionate, it's something you look forward to every morning. It's going to make it so much easier to be successful in business. And really, one thing we do see at times too is, a lot of people fall out of love with the business when they're in there, but just really try to keep that love for what you're doing forefront, and it just makes everything so much easier in the long run. And again, this is all about planning. Put it on paper. This isn't something where you kind of just think about it and it's, oh yeah, this is something I could do. Really sit down, take the time, plan it out, short term, long term. Put it on paper, keep it close to you, change it when you need to, but stick to the plan, because like we mentioned earlier, this environment is ever changing. It's always moving. Things change all the time. So put it on paper, but always remember it's changing. So you're going to change that plan and then stick to it and work towards that goal that you have in your plan. So start now. What can you do today? Be proactive. really right today. Spend some time, go over your plan, and then have a reactive approach to your business journey as well, where if something changes, you react to it. You're moving, you're agile, you're pivoting, you're reactive, but also proactive in the journey. And then you got to know where you stand, where you want to go, develop those relationships. I know we keep touching on it, but I can't stress how important it is. And then this is the big one. What can you improve immediately? And what can you start improving over time? So again, that will come to that short-term, long-term plan that you guys will start developing for your business. But there are things I bet in your business that you can sit down and improve immediately. And then the other things, that's where the planning comes in, where you can start improving them over time. So leave everyone with 8 minutes. I don't know if anything came over in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, we'll leave a little time at the end here. We'd be happy to answer them. It could be about anything we talked about. It could be about commercial lending, anything really. We'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thanks so much, Phil and Mohammed. That was super, super beneficial and helpful. We did have one question come in, and for those of you listening in, if you do have questions, go ahead and throw them into the Q&A box, and we'll take the next 7 minutes or so to get as many as we can answered. But the first one that came in, Phil, someone's asking, what's the best way to establish business credit for a new business?
Yeah, so again, this goes back to a little bit what Mohammed talked about. Is there's no business credit score, but I think establishing it is first is creating that relationship, and then just could be a minor need. You can come in and you say like, here's where my business is at, here's where I want it to go. And I mean, there's lots of loan programs out there for young businesses. We're an SBA preferred lender. That's one we utilize all the time for small businesses. And we can do a small working capital loan, something of that nature. And then that's what we see, where there's a lot of relationships I have that I've had for many years, and they've come in and gotten a very small loan in the beginning. It's gone very well, and now you graduate, you're lending for buildings and large lines and things of that nature. But I think as far as developing is just start that relationship, have the banker understand your business, and again, be at that spot where you can show cash flow. You'll have collateral as well. And then at that point, it's just going to be when the need arises that you already have that relationship, you can go to them and you're able to structure something in terms of getting a loan in place.
And I just want to add to that a little bit too. When everything to what Phil just mentioned, it's also really important to understand that, as a young business, you're establishing yourself. Let's say you go out there and you even start with a business credit card. Where your personal finances really step in is that there's not a lot of institutions that don't look at your personal credit to qualify you for a business credit card. So that's also a place that you'd want to keep in mind and realize that also is a piece that factored in and is looked at to get someone really established. But also partnering with those institutions. This is where local is key, right? Looking at your local institutions that can really come in, right? Local banks, local credit unions, to ask, say like, hey, for this, what is the best way? How do I leverage some of these key loans or my personal credit to help me get to this point? So that way, at least when I do grow and I can talk to someone like Phil, we can look at some of those other options as far as SBA or commercial or whatever the case is. So very important to keep in mind.
Awesome. We did have one other question, and it's the individual is asking if you'd recommend pulling from a personal 401k versus pursuing a small business loan. I'll just start by saying it's going to really depend on your situation, your business, and everything. But you can reach out to a trusted partner like Phil and Mohammed from AZ Financial, and they'd be happy to sit down with you and get to know you and your business a little better to be able to give you a recommendation. But Phil, do you have anything more to add to that?
I would echo what you said. At the end of the day, we're not technically financial advisors, so it's tough for us to say that. But if from a broad standpoint, I would just say, if you pencil it out, if it makes sense to do that as far as costs, penalties, things of that nature, if you did pull it out. But again, that's going to be again case by case basis, depending on what the need is. A lot of factors at play, but yeah, that's a tough one that I'd say Thomas summed it up pretty well. That it's a case by case basis. It's hard to give a definitive answer on that.
And
Yeah,
you're
and
welcome to. Oh, go ahead, Mohammed.
just to emphasize a little bit of a key points to that too, right? You'd want to talk to a financial advisor, one, to understand that implication. They would also want to probably direct you on the tax side, right, when it comes to something like that, and understanding that there's multiple pieces to it if you did decide to do something like that. So you would really want to assess it from a high level before, making that kind of investment.
Mm-hmm.
Course. And if you don't have a financial advisor, you're welcome to reach out to Local First. I'm sure we can make a recommendation or an introduction for you, or just get an understanding of how much it is you're looking to, how much money you are needing to access, how much capital you need to kind of try to steer you in the right direction. So. Well, great. Well, Phil and Mohammed, thank you so much for your time today. This was incredibly beneficial. And once again, a reminder to everyone, this has been recorded. We will put a copy of it on the Local First website so you can access it at any time, as well as the slides. If you'd like to get in touch with Phil or Mohammed, we will be sure to share their contact information. And Local First Arizona is hosting these workshops all the time. So please do reach out to our team. We provide technical assistance to all of our members, our kitchen entrepreneurs, all the businesses to get involved with our organization. And if we can be a resource for you, we are more than happy to. So thank you again to AZ Financial for their support today. And hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Guys.